him for Nineveh S. Mckeen, First Lieutenant in the Civil War, who received a Congressional Medal of Honor for bravery, and we're all here together on this beautiful day for the dedication ceremony. The ceremony will be led by the Sons of the Union Veterans, William T. Sherman Camp number 65, assisted by a decamp from the 31st Illinois Volunteers from Marshall, Illinois. Lieutenant Nineveh S. Mckeen was the first lieutenant, promoted as he was discharged to captain and brevet major. He was from Company H, 21st Illinois Volunteer Infantry, which was formed in Marshall, Illinois. He is buried here in Glenwood Cemetery in Collinsville, Illinois.
It's not here if you all want to go down there. Put a cap on your own. Hello, Mary.
Own First Lieutenant Nineveh Shaw in Glenwood Cemetery, Collinsville, Illinois. Ready? This is Captain Gam and his sergeant discussing his place in the program.
He joined the K 1st Missouri Cavalry. William Quigley was in 21st Illinois, and Uncle Doe, John Adams, Montgomery, was in 30th Illinois. Which
participants in the ceremony. It is from the Sherman Camp number 65 Sons of the Union Veterans, and has been very instrumental in forming this group to participate in these ceremonies.
Probably after. Yeah, I can lift it. Because I take care of the lift.
This is a bereaved participant in the reenactment who's dressed as a widow, part of the ceremony. Mckeen. And this lady, Mary Mckeen Nash, is his granddaughter.
The extra programs normal or not?
And we're grateful that she's here for this presentation. For the dedication of the stone.
Did she say you got weed back in your umbrella?
Yeah.
Does she know where it is? Yeah. Well, I saw it when we were getting ready to leave. We looked at it.
Alright. Hey.
wow, God.
And this is the color guard.
Walk forward.
No one.
Harder. Up. Hey.
Grenade to save a buddy's life, leading a charge against an enemy position, or jumping into a burning sea to rescue a wounded fellow seaman are all classic examples of medal-worthy heroics. In recent years, the medal has become known as the medal you must die to receive. And in fact, over 70% of the medals awarded during the Korean conflict were awarded to those who had made the supreme sacrifice for their country. How revered is this medal? Two famous Georges may hold the answer to this question. George Custer once declared he would give up all his gold braid and rank
is listed as being Clark County, Illinois, and his occupation is listed as being a merchant. He was enrolled on June 14, 1861, and he resigned his commission July 2, 1864. It's interesting to note that after this, he was made a captain of the commissary department, and then later in 1866, for a job well done with his military career, he was brevetted a major. His stone will say first lieutenant, and that is the rank that he held when he was awarded for the deeds that he was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. But we do want you to understand, at the end of his military career, he was a brevet major. Let me give you some information on the heroic deeds that he performed to earn this citation. This is taken from the government archives, and now this is going to be a little strange. We all know about red tape, right? Military bungling and so forth. Lieutenant Mckeen had to apply for his own medal. Should he have not bothered, he would have never got it. Therefore, it took a lot of paperwork and red tape. And by the way, he did not receive the medal until 1890. The government was a little slow with these things. Fortunately, he did receive it before his death. The gentlemen placing the wreath are from Clark County, and the county government there has officially recognizes the occasion and has sent this wreath. We'll have a little music from the band, and we encourage you to sing with him. That's off. Of this occasion. I say that for this reason. When we came to set the new stone, I noticed that there are other veterans buried here in the Civil War, Revolution, World War I. Some of their stones are not in the best condition. So I will charge the local Civil War unit members from the side of the state, or from Illinois, plus these people from the Sons of Union Veterans, to work closely with these people here in Collinsville in the cemetery to see that sometime within the next 2 years we can get these stones.
Well, I don't know. I got to get this lady permission.
As long as he's warm, okay.
Okay. Now, I'll tell you what. No, I'll tell you what. It's this.
Yeah. Payment, that's a 10 o'clock class. You don't mind.
I can take you to if you want me to.
Yeah. I don't know.
You have to pay in that square.
Okay.
I know that. You just do the best you
Jack
can.
to your left a little bit more. Ed, why don't you get on the other side of him? Yeah, right there.
Because that camera's not made for it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take two. I'm going to take one here.
And so Nineveh S. Mckeen, we salute you. This is Nineveh's uniform in the museum. And his Congressional Medal of Honor around his neck.
Well, it didn't get it all the way though. It got stopped up in the end. But no, it didn't burn. They stopped it. Oh yeah, just burned it.
Our honored guests.
Doesn't smell things very well. It probably would have went to bed. Sure. Would have burned all day. Yeah. You know, but out there is abuse.
So you have to keep somebody else in purpose. When you come in, you go from the out.
And here we have Ed McDonald, who was responsible for getting this thing together. This has been a great day for us and a great day for Lieutenant Nineveh S. Mckeen as we honor him with a new stone, our Congressional Medal of Honor recipient and our hero in the Council Historical Society Museum.
Police say the man tried to keep warm by huddling under cardboard. Authorities say the victim was carrying papers that indicated he had served in the U.S. Navy.
The men and women who once served their country in the military were honored on this weekend before Veterans Day. News Channel 5's Ruth Ezell reports on some of the Veterans Day observances right here in the bi-state.
The Veterans Day parade in downtown St. Louis included more than 130 units from different branches of the armed forces. Perhaps because of the morning chill, not many spectators were on hand. But people who did show up said the weather is no excuse.
My sons are veterans, so yes, very patriotic. I think more people ought to be out.
Pamela Barty agrees. She greeted the veterans and active servicemen and women with a sign saying simply, thanks.
Because I know everyone that has passed me has said thank you. No one else has said thank you. Every single group of people.
Christchurch Cathedral held an ecumenical service in honor of veterans. 5 clergymen from various denominations joined in paying tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifice for their country. Here in Collinsville, Illinois, a war hero from the Civil War was honored in a special ceremony. Union Blue could be seen on a hill in the Glenwood Cemetery as the new gravestone was dedicated to First Lieutenant Nineveh Mckeen, Company H, 21st Volunteer Illinois Infantry, Medal of Honor recipient.
Pretty feisty guy. Was wounded 3 times, fought in 2 battles, captured the Alabama flag.
Mckeen and many other Americans have fought and died for their country. From the Revolutionary War to Desert Storm, it is their sacrifice that is being remembered. In Collinsville, Ruth Ezell, News Channel 5.
And observances tonight include a candlelight service in the Court of Honor right across the street from the Soldiers Memorial on the 1300 block of Chestnut, right in St. Louis. Well, still to come on News Channel 5 at 6, hundreds of abortion protesters get all tied up in Chicago.
And they've got the ambition and the brains. Now all they need is a few bucks. We'll show you how some St. Louis's students are getting $1 million ticket for a college education.
Now we want to get another one.
Oh, that's fine. That's like wine in the summertime, boys.
Gotcha. Now we get the glove on.
That's correct.
Those names, Sabbert.
That's my father.
Whoa!
There should be
Well, it's a severe angle.
Are you married?
Well, just go lean back.
Oh, there, Chris.
Yeah, I can move it.
No, I'm fine. This is real good.
If you slide down the hill.
Yeah, good. Mary.
Hi, how are you?
Terrific. Take off your sunglasses.
Real good to see you.
Yeah.
Oh, we're looking for fine.
Where'd you park?
It was by us.
Nice. How's Paul? Hey, nice fishing.
There's always other
It'll be frozen over pretty soon, huh?
There's always other I'm more pictures. You're Mr. Wrigley? Okay. I am
My father died on my.
I am her niece. I was You're with time her niece. My father was his brother. I'm a king. She was a king.
Nancy Fox.
Yeah, that's right.
You know.
She always slept with him.
My wife.
Well, that was Jerry.
All right.
That's not what her mother named.
And then
My daughter, right this side of her, right?
sunglasses on. Okay. How you doing? Yes. Yes. Oh, I love it.
Okay, do you want me to wrap it
Charming.
around?
I love a little school. We know the kids so well. You know, I was always.
He married my
It's neat.
mother.
It's
She
neat.
was 39 and
Very. I still would like to be back.
we're on time.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. Here. All right. Thanks.
I haven't met you.
That's all.
James, real like.
I do.
Yes, correct.
Thank you, ma'am.
Put it in your pocket now.
It's perfect.
Yeah, but it looks great. You look like you're in Vail. You need to be taking the float.
Oh, I will. I've been there before.
It's a mixed group, and we do the best we can, and as far as you know, we practice this for all.
We have amassed a lot of doctors.
They didn't have these 150 years ago. Approaching now will be our honor firing squad from Company C of the 34th Illinois.
I found right. March. Halt. Front.
Face. Hooray! Pitch!
And then what? Leave that. On.
Squat halt. Right pivot. Arm. Squat forward. March. One. Halt.
Attention squad. Star Spangled Banner.
Gathered. We thank you too, O Lord, for the gift of the life of Nineveh Mckeen and for the ways he served our country and community. We are grateful for his examples of courage and generosity, for the fact that he was the kind of man whom we remember in such a special way. We ask, O Lord, that we might now feel your holy presence with us as we do those things that we are doing, that we also seek to do your will through all that we do and say this day. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
For being with us today. Please be seated. I'd like to recognize some of the people that are here today and make some introductions. First, Mrs. Mary Libby Mckeen Nash, granddaughter of Nineveh Mckeen, is here with us today, and we're very happy to have you here. Came all the way from Nebraska. Her daughter, Mary Roberta Mckeen Montequin, is here with us also. Warren Kingsbury, a half-brother to Mrs. Mckeen, or Mrs. Nash, I'm sorry. His wife, Jerry, their daughter, Chris Lobenthal, and a niece, Nancy Fox, is all here with us today from the family. And we're very happy to have those people with us today. I'd also like to recognize two of our city council members that were able to join us today. Stan Schaefer is here with us today, and George Gillespie, somewhere. There he is. Putting on most of the ceremony today, the man that was speaking earlier is Major Jack Grothe, and he's with the Sons of the Veterans Reserve. He's really in charge of the ceremony today, so if things go wrong, we can blame him for that. Jack, where are you from? St. Louis. St. Louis. Sure. And Mr. Ed McDonald is here with us today. He's from Troy, and he is the commander of Camp 65, the William T. Sherman Camp of the Sons of the Union Veterans. And he's been instrumental in doing a lot of the work that was done. Floyd Sperino did a major amount of research for Lieutenant Mckeen, and helped us and helped Camp 65 get the new grave marker for Lieutenant Mckeen. So we're very happy to have all of them with us, and we'd like to thank the Alton Brigade of the Fife and Drum Corps for providing the music for today. We weren't sure we were going to have that. We had some recorded music, but I'm sure glad they showed up. It's very nice. Thank you.
Corporal Ed McDonald of the 34th Illinois and commander of the William T. Sherman Billy Yank Camp 65 of the Sons of Union Veterans will give you the background on the Medal of Honor.
The Medal of Honor, our nation's highest, most respected military award. Many times those who have not been so awarded have laid claim to its glory. Just as many times it has incorrectly been called the Congressional Medal of Honor, when in fact the Congress has nothing to do with awarding of the medal except in extremely unusual cases. The Medal of Honor is awarded for outstanding individual leadership, courage, under fire at the risk of one's own life, often leading to the saving of another's life. Throwing oneself on a grenade to save a buddy's life, leading a charge against an enemy position, or jumping into a burning sea to rescue a wounded fellow seaman are all classic examples of medal-worthy heroic. In recent years, the medal has become known as the medal you must die to receive. And in fact, over 70% of the medals awarded during the Korean conflict were awarded to those who had made the supreme sacrifice for their country. How revered is this medal? Two famous Georges may hold the answer to this question. George Custer once declared he would give up all his gold braid and rank for a Medal of Honor. George Patton said he would trade his immortal soul for such an award. Neither was ever to receive the medal. Of the 3,397 persons who have received the Medal of Honor, barely more than 200 are still living. The medal is not awarded as a result of a competition or Olympics. Therefore, the Medal of Honor winner is somewhat of a conflict of terms. The correct way to identify a person who has been so awarded is the term recipient, a Medal of Honor recipient. Whether it be from the Army, the Navy, Marines, the Air Force, or by presidential declaration, the Medal of Honor represents valor, valor of the highest caliber, of and beyond the call of duty. Now, since this speech was prepared, they have awarded 17 more medals for the Persian Gulf. And there are 204 living today, and only 17 received 2 Medals of Honor, and one of them was Tom Custer, George's brother. And only one received its 2 medals in the Civil War, and this was again Tom Custer. There are 5 sources that you can receive the medal, and the Army is the most common. The Navy and the Marine Corps is the only one that can be awarded by military during a peacetime, but is also the only one that can be recalled. In the Air Force, since 1947, by special act of Congress, and only 17 in history have been awarded, 8 to unknowns of World War I allies, and by presidential declaration, and that's only one time, and that was by President Reagan to a Vietnam missing in action POW. Let the ceremony proceed.
the recipient. First Lieutenant Mckeen, by the description taken from the Adjutant General's report of the state of Illinois at the time of his enlistment. He joined Company H, 21st Regiment, Illinois Volunteer Infantry. This was Grant's regiment before he proceeded upward in his military career. It is interesting to note that we have a gentleman here, some gentlemen from the Clark County, who had ancestors that served in this regiment. I myself had two great uncles that served in this regiment. Lieutenant Mckeen is described as being 24 years old at the time of his enlistment. His height was 5 foot 11 inches, which is exactly my height. His complexion is listed as light. He had blue eyes, and his hair is listed as being light, so he was probably blonde-headed. His place of birth is listed as being Clark County, Illinois, and his occupation is listed as being a merchant. He was enrolled on June 14, 1861, and he resigned his commission July 2nd, 1864. It's interesting to note that after this, he was made a captain of the commissary department, and then later in 1866, for a job well done with his military career, he was brevetted a major. His stone will say first lieutenant, and that is the rank that he held when he was awarded for the deeds that he was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. But we do want you to understand that at the end of his military career, he was a brevet major. Let me give you some information on the heroic deeds that he performed to earn this citation. This is taken from the government archives, and now this is going to be a little strange. We all know about red tape, right? Military bungling and so forth. Lieutenant Mckeen had to apply for his own medal. Should he have not bothered, he would have never got it. Therefore, it took a lot of paperwork and red tape. And by the way, he did not receive the medal until 1890. The government was a little slow with these things. Fortunately, he did receive it before his death in 1890. Reading from the information that he submitted. Now, bear in mind that this information was substantiated, and we have on file letters from his captain, letters from other men and officers that served with him to verify this statement. Statement reads, "This officer petitions for a Medal of Honor and submits his sworn statement relative to his gallantry and distinguished service, for which he claims to be entitled to such medal, to the following effect: that at the Battle of Stone River near Murfreesboro, Tennessee, December 30th, 1862, a charge was made by Carlin's brigade of Davis's division to capture 12 pieces of the famous Washington, that's the rebel, light artillery, and that the charge was repulsed by a division of Confederate infantry and was very destructive to the assailants, the 21st Illinois having 303 men killed and wounded out of 666 men engaged." That's an awful high percent of casualties. That he received 3 severe wounds in said charge, 1 in the head, 1 in the side, and an injury to his spine from a sliver from a cedar tree which shattered by a cannon shot from a rebel battery, from which he has never recovered, and for which he holds a pension certificate. That on the 25th day of June 1863 at Liberty Gap, in a charge made by Carter's brigade on the Confederates defending the gap aforesaid, he captured the colors of the 8th Arkansas Infantry, that the fire of his company H was concentrated on the color guard of the regiment, that's the rebels, aforesaid. The men composing the guard were all killed or wounded, and that he, the applicant, leading directly in front of the flag, sprang out and caught said flag as it was falling to the ground. At the Battle of Chickamauga, September 20th, 1863, he was captured with a large number of members of his regiment, and was one of the 15 officers who planned and executed the famous little, quote, tunnel, quote, out of Libby Prison, Richmond, Virginia. And he made good his escape to the Union lines, returned to the Army, and served to the end, July 4th, 1865. That is what he did to earn this medal. I guess as the saying goes, in those days men were men. Keeping in mind that the Congressional Medal of Honor was first proposed for veterans of the Civil War. That's when the medal came into existence. You can see what it took to earn one of these medals. We're talking about a time when men fought within visual sight of each other, sometimes hand to hand. If you've studied history, the charges were made shoulder to shoulder. Many casualties went down. This time we would like to, the government, after many years, there was a previous stone here with his name, rank, and so forth, but it did not have any indication that he had won the Medal of Honor. He was just another soldier buried amongst the many that you will see here. The government has finally decided that Medal of Honor winners should have a special stone to denote the fact, and we are now going about the country trying to locate these. We've been very fortunate to locate this one in the community, and we are going to dedicate it today. Will you lift the... battle into the week.
Let us pray.
Cover.
Almighty God, we thank you that we are indeed living in a time when there is no conflict in our land. We thank you, though, that when we have, there have been brave men and women who have answered the challenge and have fought for what they thought was right. We thank you, O Lord, for all your servants who have faithfully and courageously served God and country. But here today, we especially thank you for First Lieutenant Nineveh S. Mckeen. May the example of his life encourage us all to be bold in ours. We ask now, O Lord, that we might feel your presence with us as we dedicate this new memorial stone. Bless each of us here also with gifts of love, faithfulness, and courage. Be with Lieutenant Mckeen's family as they have come to this place. Watch over them as you watch over us all. Be especially with those who have traveled far distances to be here and keep them safe. Now, O Lord, watch over us and keep us in your peace and love, and always serving you. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
And at this time, we will have the placing of flowers in a wreath. By the way, since the Reverend just spoke, I don't know if many of you heard the weather report. I appreciate you being here in spite of the weather report. You notice how the weather has cooperated. I am a park ranger stationed at Jefferson Barracks, which is a military installation, or was. And we always say in cases of this for the weather, somebody see the chaplain. I think the chaplain has done a good job today. We will need the placing of the flowers and the wreath. The gentlemen placing the wreath are from Clark County, and the county government there has officially recognizes the occasion and has sent this wreath. We'll have a little music from the band, and we encourage you to sing with them. We will now do the military honors, and after that, the color guard will be retired, and then I'll just have a few more words, and that will conclude the Senate ceremony. Sergeant, take charge of the rifle squad. Folks, if we can have you stand for this.
Squad. Shoulder up. Shoulder up.
we can have the troops brought to attention, we will retire the colors.
Squad.
Color guard, retire the colors.
Present on. Shoulder arms.
That concludes the formal part of our ceremony, but before we leave, I want to thank everyone for attending. I feel that it's fortunate that we have such a distinguished veteran buried here. There is more to this than meets the eye. This little ceremony today will not be the last of this occasion. I say that for this reason. When we came to set the new stone, I noticed that there are other veterans buried here in the Civil War, Revolution, World War I. Some of their stones are not in the best of condition. So I will charge the local Civil War unit members from this side of the state, or from Illinois, plus the people from the Sons of Union Veterans, to work closely with the people here in Collinsville and the cemetery to see that sometime within the next 2 years we can get these stones brought up to the quality of this monument. I think that would be a fine tribute to the lieutenant. Let me thank the lady for coming all the way from Nebraska. Most important, that makes our day, ma'am, that you can come. Also, I want to thank the various military units here. Folks, remember I told you it was entirely unrehearsed, but not bad, right? I want to thank you boys for doing your military duty. I want to thank the library and the Historical Society and the people from the cemetery for helping us out. They all filled in and did a good job. Well done. Thank you very much. You can mix and mingle. And like I say, sometime within the next 2 years we shall return, and hopefully we will have these military stones brought up to what they should be. Thank you.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I'd like to make an announcement that the museum is open until 5 o'clock tonight. Would like to invite each of you to come by the museum and see some of Lieutenant Mckeen's personal uniforms that we have in the museum and some other Civil War artifacts, and we'd like for all of you to come by and look at that if you could. Thank you very much for coming.
Military officers and sergeant, you can dismiss the troops.
Little school teachers, good to see you.
He was the one that always stood up for us.
Oh,
that's
it
old
too.
breed here, I'm telling you.
Isn't that that's a beautiful? But did you ever see anybody weather retirement like him?
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't he look good?
I look
You
younger.
bet.
I'm ready to go back to teaching.
No, don't you do that. Don't you do that to yourself. No. You and Mr. Shaver both living testimony to what retirement can mean. Nice. This is just what I want to do.
I haven't seen Jerry here lately.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, go.
His turn. Okay.
Mike.
Can you sing it? Concludes the program.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it is. Channel 5? Okay. Wonder, my daughter could have been there, the great-great-granddaughter. She could get away from
You can ask me to go stand there.
No, I don't want to do this. It's just I got a panoramic and I'm trying to get it.
Pioneer. He was a recovery family in Marshall in 1845.
Yeah, I got a panoramic, see, but I keep getting other people in. Yeah, right here you can. You can see all their faces.
Also served.
What is that? That's something Reverend brought. Did everyone get one of these tickets? I want to make sure we're not going to draw right now. I just want to make sure you all got one. Won't do you any good because I got that. I haven't forgotten the Pledge of Allegiance, which we'll open with. If you all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll go directly to our speaker this afternoon. He has some inside connections, that's why we have this beautiful day. He laid a bunch of stuff up here, and what I saw was the Evangelical Catechism. And I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't remember my lesson.
He remembered what prayer is.
Yeah, that was funny. I looked at this and I remember the question I had on catechism and I quoted it verbatim. So I learned that one.
That's 43 years ago.
Thank you, Don.
He was confirmed the same year I was.
Yeah, Don and I were talking last night. We found out we were born the same year and everything, and I didn't realize he was that old. Oh, it's with great pleasure I get to introduce Don. It's strange to say this, but he married me 10 years ago this month. Or he performed the ceremony. I always hear people talk about the minister, he married me. I thought, well, without further, Reverend.
I asked Jack about how long should the program be, because I think I'm fairly flexible. It can go from 10 minutes to an hour or 2 hours if you want it. But Jack and I were talking last night, and I was privy to a little bit of story about Jack some time ago. You know, Jack has played the dulcimer in our church, and he teaches dulcimer lessons to many different people, and he's been involved in that form of music for some time. But Jack also, he likes, like I do, the songs from the 40s and 50s. I listen to that station 55 and 1430, those ones that play the old timers. I don't know, but I still like the 40s and 50s music, reaching back to the 30s too. But anyhow, Jack called over to Camelot Records not too long ago, and when he called over there, he simply said to the lady who answered the phone, he says, "Do you have eyes of blue and love that's real?" And she said, "Well, no, but I have a husband and 11 kids." Jack said, "Is that a record?" "I don't think so," replied the woman, "but that's enough for me." So anyhow, I appreciate it. I don't even remember when Jack asked me to do this. It's been a good while ago. Whenever they did their program planning, they were doing it a long time in advance. So I did have it on my calendar for some time. As many of you know, St. John's Church celebrated its 100th anniversary last year, 1994. And I thought I'd give you the chart, and I had this passed around so that you know how we're related. If you don't happen to see your denomination on there, you probably are a part of the Baptist Pentecostal wing that would come right in the middle of that where it says Anabaptism. Do you see that in the middle of a chart? Most others of you from mainline denominations and the old traditional historic denominations can probably find yourself on there. I'm sorry that the print is so small, but I have to use a magnifying glass now to see the real small stuff. But I've been doing this enough over the years that I can pretty much make out what it is without really knowing for sure that those letters are there. But I thought it would be interesting for you to see where our history is as United Church of Christ. Now, the only reason the United Church of Christ is so big there is because we use this in instructional classes, and hopefully they can see our history and where our roots are. But the roots of the Evangelical Church that was founded here in Collinsville in 1894 go back to the Evangelical Church of Germany. And the Evangelical Church of Germany was the formation of a union in 1817 when the King of Prussia said that as they celebrated Martin Luther's 300th anniversary of nailing the 95 Theses on the Castle Church door in Wittenberg, Germany, let's celebrate by merging the Reformed Church and the Lutheran Church in Germany. And that's what they did in 1817, and they called the church the Evangelical Church of Germany. That today is still one of the recognized state churches of Germany. Other churches have status and they get tax money in Germany today, but the state church basically has been the Evangelical Church and then also the Roman Catholic Church. Now, in 1894, obviously, and I don't know all the motives for forming St. John's Church. I wish they would have written all that down in the book. But many of them felt like they wanted a church like they had in Germany that was of the evangelical background, that was more than a Lutheran church, and was also something other than Reformed. And so when our ancestors founded St. John's Church, they were founding a church that had a mixture of the Reformed element when it came to Holy Communion. The Reformed element tend not to hold the communion elements as being as sacred as our Catholic and Lutheran partners did, but that they were sacred because Christ was in the presence of communion, rather than seeing any kind of transubstantiation of the elements that turned the bread and the wine into the body and the flesh of Christ. Now, obviously, there were those of Lutheran background in our ancestry who still held fast to transubstantiation for themselves and believed, along with their Catholic brethren and sisters, that the actual elements were transformed in the Mass or in the service of worship. The other thing that I think probably caused our ancestors to form the Evangelical Church was a desire also for a little bit freer position on the study of the Bible, that the lay people and clergy had more freedom in interpreting the Holy Scriptures. It was not so doctrinally rigid that unless you believe this, you couldn't be one of us, but rather said, if you believe that Jesus Christ is Lord, and we go from there, we'll be a sister and brother in Christ, without having to say that you have to believe every jot and tittle of the Apostles' Creed or every jot and tittle of the Nicene Creed, or believe that every actual word of the Bible is inerrant. And so our ancestors had a more free approach to the study of Holy Scripture. However, they didn't want it to go off willy-nilly. They wanted to have some structure to the faith, and they wanted to have those things that they held in common, and so they created what he's reading here right now, the Evangelical Catechism in 1850, which our ancestors subscribed to in 1894, and we still use this in part with our confirmation classes today because it says a lot in it about the doctrine and about the theology and the interpretation of Scripture as we have held sacred, in a sense, down through the years and held very, very important to our faith. And so the Evangelical Catechism is something we still use in the life of our church. Now, the Evangelical Church also probably was founded by some people who simply wanted to maybe change churches, maybe wanted to maybe do things their way. I don't know, any kind of personal motivation might have been there. Because we had some of the founding fathers, and when I say fathers, because there was literally fathers and the men of the church, who later on, we know on the records, who transferred back to other churches in the community from which they had come originally. Now, when we talk about living in covenant together, the Evangelical Church said that as we live in covenant, we are, in a sense, priests to one another, and that we minister to one another in the name of Christ. And that's the priesthood of all believers. It doesn't mean that you can go off and be your own little priest and take care of yourself as an isolated Christian. No, it means that we're concerned for one another's faith, we're concerned for one another's well-being, and this is the priesthood of all believers as we live together under Christ. And so, we had these families that formed the church. On April the 12th, in 1894, the families that were going to form this congregation met in the Presbyterian Church over here on Morrison. They called it the English Presbyterian Church. I didn't know there was a German one, but they called it English. Anyhow, I just said that, you know. It might have been French, who knows. But anyhow, they worshiped that morning at the First Presbyterian Church, and then they adjourned, and that afternoon they met down here at, do you know where 113 St. Louis Road? It's across from Piggly Wiggly, and there's someplace, that 113 is where the house of Christ Emig was. And I don't know how many of you remember Christ Emig's house. Anybody remember Christ Emig's house? Well, it's down there where that doctor's office is, as I understand it, along in there where the doctor's office is and those apartments are, right there on the right-hand side. There that was gathered that day were some interesting men who signed the charter, or who signed the founding paper that created Gemeinde even. See, this is where I have to call on Maida, because Maida can say these things in German much better. Evangelisch Johannes Kirche. Is that close enough? Well, give it the German ring. Come on, Maida.
Evangelische Gemeinde St. Johannes Kirche.
Right. That's what it literally was. Okay. One of the first signers was Chris Emig, the owner of the house where they met. And Doris Bauer has done the research for our church, and this was published in a series in our Informer, our newsletter, and I found it very, very helpful and interesting. And Chris Emig was the owner of a grocery store and laundry down there on St. Louis Road. Well, we still haven't gotten too far off from the grocery store or laundry, have we? There's still one of each. It wasn't the same place, obviously, but that's still in the neighborhood there, grocery store and laundry. Then there was Henry Stumpf, and I don't know where he was a shoe cobbler. Does anybody know of Henry Stumpf's shoe cobbler, that he was a shoemaker, shoe cobbler? Anybody remember Henry Stumpf? Okay, well, he was one of the charter signers. Another one was Henry Koenig, whose ancestors, of course, Koenig Hardware is an ancestor of that Henry Koenig. It may not be direct from him. It could be from his brother, okay, because there were several Koenigs in that family. And Henry Koenig's several sons, or not sons, but brothers, were here at that town, so at that time. But Henry, it says in there, Doris found out, was listed in the census of the early 1900s as a landlord. So maybe he had already made it. And he was just watching the money. I don't know what he was doing at that time. But anyhow, he was listed as a landlord. Then there was William Schmidt. And he was a farmer who must have come here from the Blackjack area. He must have lived out. Does that sound right, or was it northeast of here? Doris, you remember?
Blackjack area around East Mill Creek Road.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was out that part of town. I remember reading that. Okay. Then there was John Dominic, who was a miner. There were a lot of miners in the community at that time. Somewhere in my memory, I don't know, was there 2,200 miners at that time or something like that? It was a large number of miners at that time. Then there was Peter Bernhardt. Any of you remember Peter Bernhardt? Peter Bernhardt, I believe, was an uncle to Josephine Bernhardt Dunham. I think he was an uncle. It wasn't the father, I know that, but I think it might have been an uncle. Anyhow, he was a blacksmith, which was interesting. He was also an inventor. He invented the potato planter. Do you need one? And then he created a farm machinery business here, and it was called Bernhardt and something. I don't remember. Was it? You remember? Okay. Yeah. Bernhardt. On Vandalia Street. Okay. Good. Then there was Henry, and I don't know if he said Keister or Keister. I think they say Keister. Keisker? Yeah, Keisker. Okay, he was employed at the zinc plant, and his descendants, one of them I know is Dorothy Lackerman, and there's some tie-in with Laura Shirley on that, just as Laura Shirley's mother was a sister of Koenig who joined our church. Okay, Laura Shirley's mother was a sister. She married a Cassing. She was a Koenig, and she married a Cassing. So she's still in our church. She's 91 years of age right now. But anyhow, there's some Grafes who are also, well, Dorothy was a Grafe. The Grafe family is related to this Keisker family also. Then there was Fred Simon, who has the most direct contact with our community today, and that Simon Jewelers was his business, and of course his descendants are in the business yet today, and all of the descendants there basically, except for Fred's family, are still a part of, and the great-grandchildren, all the great-great-grandchildren are all a part of our church yet today. So the Simon family has been an ongoing part of the life of our church. John Weber was the owner of a meat market, and I don't remember where that meat market was, but was it on Combs or St. Clair? Do you remember, Doris?
We never found out.
That's what it was. You didn't find that out.
We did not find the address.
Okay. But he had a meat market in town, and we had an ad that he had in the paper. You found an ad that was in the paper for good meats at at his meat market. Then there was August Telensky. He was a miner. Don't know too much about August, but he was a miner, and reflected also once again that this was a varied occupational group that was there, those 10 men that day. Okay, now the other thing I mentioned, Josephine Dunham, and Josephine Bernhardt Dunham was born on September the 19th, 1894. The same year our church was organized, and last fall we celebrated her 100th birthday, the same year when we were celebrating our church's birthday. So we are very privileged to have someone who's been with us the very life of the church, in a sense. She was baptized, however, she wasn't the first baptized. She was baptized like in January of the next year, so she was baptized in 95, but she was one of the early ones of our congregation. The members of our church gradually became involved in community organizations, in politics, and in the school district work. The professions, we have had variety of professions down through the years through St. John's Church. We have had many wonderful people who have been pillars in the faith, and it's hard for me to tell stories about different people in the life of the church, but I do think that since there were a few humorous things that I could mention a little bit. Some of you may remember Lena Wild. You all remember, any of you remember Lena Wild? Well, you know, our church is noted for its Worst Mart that it has annually, and the story is told that Lena Wild was working in the kitchen at the Worst Mart, and Eddie Wiedewell thought he'd come in and help her in the kitchen. Well, I don't know if that really helped matters or not, but because Eddie was always telling jokes and stories, and so he told a joke one afternoon while they were working there, and Lena got so tickled she fell over backwards and sat right into the sauerkraut. And Ed, of course, right away quipped. He says, "Well, I think that's just too much fat in the sauerkraut." Lena was a delight to have working around, and in 1973, she was 84 years old. And we hosted the Illinois South Conference, and she was chairman of the food committee for the Illinois South Conference. She had to prepare 5 meals for 300 to 400 people on a Monday, Sunday and Monday, and she did it. She helped our ladies and got them organized, and they put on a real spread for us, and I remember she was 84 at the time. Also, St. John's Church has encouraged involvement in the community, and both through its people, but also through its programs and also its buildings. St. John's Church, when it was organized in the house over there, and they met in the Presbyterian Church until August of that year of 1894, when they were able to build their first church. Now, start building the first church there at the corner of Seminary and Clay. And that church was then dedicated in 1895, and that became then the home of the congregation, a little white frame church. And all these pictures are in our historical book, which I brought some copies along. You can look at it later on. And so the lot where our present church stands, those two lots in the front, were purchased in 1894, and then the church was completed in 1895. We've been there ever since. Now, that was the first facility. There was a school organized also in 1894. We called it a parochial school. They called it a congregational school. And that must have been in some man's, well, let's see, I think I have the name of the guy's house by the name, because you would like to maybe know that. Started with an N, isn't that terrible? Can't really see where it is here. A Needham. Did anybody know a Needham? Needham? Okay, it was held in his house by the old post office. Now, it says in the book, old post office, so I'm assuming, was the old post office over there, or where was the old post office? Where?
100 block of Seminary.
100 block of Seminary? Well, then that would make sense because it was nearby. It sounded nearby in the narrative. Okay, so the interesting thing is that the teachers, they didn't keep teachers too long. I guess the pay was too good. But look at they had 3 teachers in 1 year. The one teacher was and I don't know if these are women or men, Pister. September and October. Then there was a Mckeen. Now that's interesting because the parochial school in Hoyleton, Illinois, way back 50 years ago, had a teacher who was named Mckeen. And then this person taught from October till January, and then the last teacher, an Apple, taught from January till May. So they split the year up. I guess 1 year of those kids was too much. Those are tough kids, I guess, you know. Other families that came into the church at that particular time, some of these names are maybe significant to you, but I know one of the names is significant to Jack, and that was an Andreas Metz family, Friedrich Demerich, then Johannes Schardin. Okay, I assume that's your great-grandfather, or was it your grandfather? Great-grandfather, yeah. And then Mrs. Sophie Schmitz. Okay, those were some that came in 18. They completed the year 1894. The membership. Those were the families that made up the membership at that time. I think it was 14 altogether at that time. Okay, also, the organizational life of the church began with the women organizing only, 14 days later, on the 26th of April of 1894, the Women's Guild, which as we now call it Women's Guild, was called the Frauverein. Okay, I guess that's the wives' organization. Frau is wife. And they've been in existence ever since. They celebrate the same anniversary as we do as a congregation. Then, by the time that the turn of the century came, things began to grow and develop, and we began to have a membership that warranted building another new church. And so by 1908, then the brick building that a lot of you people remember before this church was torn down was built in 1908 there at the corner, and was the church home for many of you who have connections with St. John's Church up until really 1963 when the new sanctuary was built. And so that sanctuary served as the church home for all those years from 1908 to 1963. During that time, also, St. John's provided facilities for the community use. So there were many programs that were used in their parish hall. The parish hall was built in 1929. And I think the figures of the cost of these buildings is kind of interesting in that brick church built in 1908 cost $12,000. And the humongous parish hall that seated 800 in the parish hall for plays and programs at that time cost $40,000 in 1929. So you can see that the dollar the cost did not spiral that much as they have in the last 25, 50 years, whatever it's been. Okay. Also, when the congregation went through all these changes, the parochial school closed 20 years after it was organized. It closed in 1914, and probably, I don't know, they didn't say the reason in there why they closed, but because more and more parents, I would assume, were, as they spoke English and spoke American, wanted their children to learn more American in the public school system, and therefore, because German really wasn't that important to many of them anymore, that they gave up the parochial school. And also, they began having English worship services in 1914. I think that's interesting that both of those things happened the same year. There was a big transformation at that time in the life of the church. Also, the last, as far as formal German service schedule, that ended in 1932. Okay, so there were some German services, but they were regularly scheduled, but they were not as frequent and were not every Sunday. But in 1932, they were discontinued completely. Also, out of the building of the parish hall with a nice stage, one of the creations was the youth groups that had been organized in 1897. Our first youth group was in 1897. They created what they called the Calico Players. And that was in 1944, and Bernice and Floyd Sperino probably can talk firsthand about the Calico Players. But the name Calico, would you please explain that for me, Floyd? Something about evangelical and Collinsville.
The CAL from Calico is the last part of evangelical, and the CO and the N is Collinsville, and the I is the individual. Calico. C-A-L-I-C-O.
That's good. That's neat. I thought you could explain it better than I could because I couldn't find it when I wanted to know what it was. Also, St. John's Church has sought to be ecumenical down through the years, and I didn't mention at the beginning, I want you to know this candelabra, if I am correct, Reverend Kuhlman told me when I came here that that is from the days when the Lithuanian Church held services at St. John's Church, and Reverend Bendikite, the pastor at that time, could preach in 3 languages, English, German, and Lithuanian. And so he held Lithuanian services for the Lithuanians of this community until they could found their own church down on Collinsville Avenue, Jerusalem Lutheran Church. And so Reverend Bendikite is the one who was given, or the church was given, this candelabra in remembrance, I guess, of the time that they worshiped with them, or maybe they even used it in worship and just left it with us. I don't know. Or maybe we thought we wanted it and we just took it. I'm not sure exactly how we got that, but anyhow. We got it anyhow, somehow or another. Likewise, during the World War II, I think it's very interesting from the statistic point of view, St. John's Church in the midst of World War II celebrated its 50th anniversary. And at that particular time, we had 125 men from the congregation in military service and 3 women. And some of you may remember, let's see, was it Henry Lepp? Harry Lepp. Harry Lepp, if I remember, was the only fatality from our congregation during that time. Now, was he a brother to Bill Lepp? Well, anyhow, there's an interesting story about Bill Lepp. Bill Lepp and Helen Smith. You all know Helen Smith? Okay, what's her maiden name? I can't think right now. Her maiden name. It's an English name. Birch, yeah. Is that English? Birch? I would think it is English. Anyhow, Helen Birch Smith and Bill Lepp were doing a production of Singin' in the Rain. And this was the new stage, okay, back in 1930s. This is the new stage, 1929, they built the hall. And they were starring in Singing in the Rain. I didn't know Singing in the Rain was that old, but anyhow, I guess it was. Anyhow, they had one of their prompters, or one of the guys who was a stage hand or something. He was supposed to sprinkle, you know, the rain, and they were going to sing in the rain. They both had their umbrellas and everything else. And he was on a real tall ladder, and he lost his balance. And they had a downpour. And needless to say, Helen and Bill went on singing. The show had to go on. But anyhow, when it was over, Reverend Kuhlman got up on the stage and said, "We have now christened the stage." Reverend Kuhlman assumed the pastorate. I'm not running through all the pastorates here, but in the first, let's see, that was 24 and 6, 30. About the first 30 years, we had 6 pastors, okay? Then Reverend Koeman comes for 44 years. Okay. And now I've been here 26 years. So the two of us have put in 70 years of the whole history of the church, which is kind of interesting. But anyhow, during that time, a lot of different things, and I mentioned Calico Players was started. The renovation of the church took place, as well as the building of the hall during his pastorate. The church continued to grow over the years. I don't think, let's see, I was going to look at something else here, that I mentioned before I go on any further here. The cemetery, that was in the early part. In 1909, St. John's Cemetery was organized, and I think it's interesting, that land down there that they bought cost them $1,950. Now, the other interesting thing is that when we were preparing for our anniversary, we realized the first person that was buried on that cemetery was a Mrs. Katie Epperson. And we found out there was no stone. And so Doris and Maida and a few others got together, and for our anniversary, she now has a stone. Yeah. And so we appreciated the gift of the cemetery men, and we gave a gift of the, the Christians out here from LaFranc donated a stone. And so we appreciate that we have that up there in her memory. Also, when we go on back to Reverend Kuhlman's time, they also knew that there was going to need to be some programming as far as the adult area of life goes. And so we saw the Evening Circle was created during his pastorate in 1941. The Women of the Day Guild were able to have their meetings at daytime, but more women in the 40s were starting to work, and so they wanted an evening group, and so they created the Evening Circle. Now, there was also a second women's group called the Martha Society, and later on they merged in with the Evening Circle. If I remember, some of you remember Bess Forbes, she was a president and was one of the leaders in that merger, if I remember right. What? Yeah, well, she was in the Guild. Did the Martha Society merge with the Guild? Okay, they merged with the Guild. Okay, but anyhow, I know she was active in the Guild. But in that time, there was some changing around in the women's organization as far as organizing. But the Evening Circle celebrated, I guess, was 50 years. Was that 1941, I think, or 1991? So not too long ago. They had their 50th anniversary. Now, the church during that time had men going into the ministry, and then in the 1970s we had a woman enter the ministry, and so over the years we've had 12 who have entered the ministry, and now our daughter is going to seminary right now. Whether she's ordained or not remains for her to decide in the future. She's opted not to be ordained right now because she thought maybe she'd like to go on into working on the campus level in youth work, and she didn't think like she wanted to be ordained when she did that, but anyhow, she will be finishing up. So there's been 13 who have entered a church vocation from the life of the church over the years, and Reverend Kuhlman was very instrumental in encouraging many young men back there in those years that he was here to enter the ministry, and we appreciate that very much. As the church grew, also programming grew in the way of establishing a library. I think, once again, Josephine Dunham's name comes up again as the first librarian of St. John's Library. And we have a library of around 5,000 books. That is a very fine library and has served our people very, very well and continues to be updated. We are now looking, they were given a gift of a couple $1,000s for a computer for the library, so they will be putting everything on computer, and not that I always know if everything's good just because it's on a computer. But anyhow, there are those who are wanting to modernize and update everything, and so they are working hard on that right now. We appreciate that very much. So our library continues to be a very important asset in our church. And we encourage people from the community, if you can't find a particular, what we call religious or character building book here at the library, our library has a lot of books that we would call religious or character building. We can't be a library for the whole community. We're not trying to be that. But we do have those quality of books and children's books that if you would want to use our library, stop by and feel free to use it. It's not just for members, it's also for friends too. Then in 1958, I believe it was, the congregation began to do long-range study as to what they should be about in the community. And one of the things which they felt like they needed to do was to build a new sanctuary. And so a result of that was the creation then of a financial fund drive. That money was put on hand until they could finally build the new sanctuary, and that was completed then in 1963 at a cost of $300,000, and the organ was $30,000, so it was a $330,000 project in 1963. Also in 1961, just a little before that, the church called its second staff person, and that was a co-pastor, Russell Miller, and he served in this community and for another 6 years. And during that time, the Evangelism Committee and the Mr. and Mrs. Fellowship were organized, some more individual groups in our church. When we look at St. John's Church, it continued to grow during Pastor Kuhlman's leadership, and at the time that he retired, that membership had grown to approximately close to 1,200, about 1,100 and some members at that particular point. I was called in 1968, and we were beginning our celebration of the 75th anniversary, and it was a nice time to come to life of the church. There was a change in pastors, but also there was a change in a sense of new gearing up for the future, having celebrated now 75 years together. During the next years, we began to look at programming, and the programming began. The preschool was begun in 1976 because we now had a facility that could house the preschool. Before that, you couldn't have the preschool kids running around upstairs because the quilts in the basement would get dirty while the women were sitting there quilting. Or if they were serving a luncheon, they couldn't have kids playing basketball upstairs because the women downstairs would have dirt in their food. So we needed a facility before we could have programming. So because of the need of a facility, in order to do programming, as soon as we had the facility, then we could program. And so we created then the preschool at that time, the Learning Tree Preschool. We also developed a Healing Community Board, and it oversaw new programs. It encouraged the Meals on Wheels program that the churches are doing jointly. We also created a parish contact group where everybody in the congregation, supposedly, it's not always so true, is on a calling team. Some member of the church will call them twice a year. We have the caring team that goes out and visits in the homes between the time the pastors go and visit. And so we've tried to reach out in that way to the people and their needs. One of the things that developed out of that then was our homebound care program, and this year is its 10th anniversary. In 1985, we created the homebound care program, having seen in the community a need for people who need respite care. Somebody just to come in maybe for 4 hours a week, or somebody to come in and give a caregiver a break. And then it wasn't long until people said, well, I'd like to stay in my home. Can't we just hire homebound care to stay with me, and so mom can be at home or with me if I need it myself? We said, yeah, we'll do that. And so last year, I think we put in something like 55,000 hours of sitting, and our budget was $400,000. So you can see there's a big need for that kind of a program in the life of the community, and we have some 33 sitters that are now on our paid staff of homebound care givers. Also, we saw that the church needed to be more accessible, and so in 1984 we built the elevator, and we added some space on so that we might accommodate our people who have disabilities and can get down to at least Fellowship Hall. We still have some work to go in our other building in order to making it totally accessible. Also, as we look forward to 1994, we created a historical committee, and so we had people on that historical committee that are very active also in this organization. And they have put together and compiled our pictures, and they have compiled all of our artifacts, and they have compiled lists of all of our articles, and we now have all of that on file. And so we appreciate that very, very much with our historical. All of you that have been on the historical committee, just raise your hand at St. John's Church. Come on, you were on for a while too. Raise your hand, Lucille. Yes. Okay, so we appreciate the tie-in with both of these organizations. Also, there's some other good stories that come out of the history of our church. The story is told, and of course people from St. John's heard this a number of times, but anyhow, the women were having a rummage sale one day, and I don't know if Tilly Finley was there or not, but anyhow, she could have been. You're old enough to have been there, I think, Tilly. She's young looking. See, I just said she's old enough. She's young looking. But anyhow, I don't know if you were there at that particular one, but anyhow, Reverend Kuhlman had gone uptown and bought a brand new hat. And he came back to the rummage sale, and the problem was he laid his hat down, and they sold it. Also, when I first came here, we had the driveway between the old church and the new church that you could pull in there and park. And the secretary, Joyce Skelton, would pull in there and she would park. She followed Bernice Sperino as secretary of the church. And I think, Bernice, were you the second or the first paid? Second, because I think Getter was the first. Dorothy Getter was the first one, first paid secretary. Well, anyhow, Joyce Skelton, she pulled in, she was there. Ann and I had to get our license now that we had moved to Illinois. And so we had to get our license, and so Ann and I go up to Edwardsville, and I pass and Ann flunks. Well, anyhow, don't tell her that, but anyhow. She didn't pass the driving part. She went 30 miles an hour in a 25-mile zone. She passed the other part fine. She got that 100%. But anyhow, when we went in and told Joyce, I went in and told Joyce about the fact that I had gotten my license and that Ann didn't get her license, ha, 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 you know, and all this kind of thing. And so then we go out and I said, well, no, what happened was that I pulled in and Joyce pulled in behind me, because then I said, Joyce, would you mind moving your car? And she said, yeah, I'll go out and move it. And so we went out and we were going to move our cars, and I get in and I'm in the car, Ann's getting in the other car, and she's sitting down, and I just start the car up and I just bang right up into poor old Joyce. And here I passed the exam. Well, in 1979, when David Staubenfeld came, he came the 1st of December, and so we had a children's Christmas program, and the pastors usually are the last to leave beside the custodian, and so here we have that beautiful big parking lot behind our church, and so I'm going to go out and leave, and so I get out and leave because we got 2 cars at that time, and Ann had taken the kids home earlier, and so I'm just going to back around and pull on out, and I backed around and I smashed right into his car. His was the only car on the parking lot. He said, I feel like I'm a member of the staff now. Some more interesting things that kind of happened, just to lighten it up before you all go to sleep on me, was that Reverend Kuhlman was one of the pastors in town who oftentimes conducted funerals for other people who were not members of St. John's Church. Obviously, he did that a lot back in those years. And one day, a lot of you know Emma Keller. Remember Emma Keller? Well, Emma Keller was going down the street and she saw Reverend Kuhlman, and when she came up to Reverend Kuhlman said, hello, Mrs. Keller, how are you doing? She said, just fine. She said, by the way, Reverend Kuhlman, she says, when I die, I'd like for you to conduct my funeral. And he said, well, I'd be glad to. She said, well, you don't have to act so happy. Ah, shucks. Well, the ecumenical approach we have shared with the lives of your churches, all of you who represent different churches down through the years. And Percy Ray and Monsignor Edgar and Chris Kuhlman were known as kind of the Collinsville Ministerial Alliance. There was no formal organization. It was just kind of what those 3 guys thought we ought to do in town. They kind of maybe did at that particular point. But formally, the Collinsville Ministerial Association came into being later on in the 1950s with a little more strength. And that has continued to grow as we have seen Meals on Wheels as a result of the Collinsville Ministerial Association, the food pantry at the First Presbyterian Church that all of our churches support. The Churchmen United that we see in our community. Also the Churchmen's Breakfast that was organized and started at Mel Ristio's restaurant. All of this has been an ecumenical venture by all of you, and so we have real good feelings with the fellow churches in town and sister churches in town that we relate to, and we hope that you all feel that way about us at St. John's, because we truly believe in the ecumenical approach to things, and we hope to continue to be that kind of supportive community. Also, the portrait of St. John's Church today might be of some interest to you. For our 100th anniversary, I thought it was interesting that we have approximately 1,400 living confirmands. And some people despair about how young people leave the church. Well, out of 1,400 living confirmands today, 600 or over 600 are still members of St. John's Church. And I think that's highly significant that many confirmands, living confirmands, are still active members of the church. There are also, in 1968, a study was done that there was 22 ethnic groups in our congregation, and there's far more ethnic groups now in our church than there was in 1968. And we celebrate celebrate that variety that we have in the life of our congregation. And to some degree, we reflect pretty much the community profile as we looked at the 1990 census for our long-range planning. The age profile of our congregation is also, I think, very encouraging. Some of you may be interested in that. We have in the age range from 0 to 13, that's the age before confirmation. We have 428 youth in that age bracket. The age of 14 to 20, we have 164 active members. 21 to 30, 233 active members. And age 31 to 40, our largest group, 291 active members. The next group is the 41 to 50, 252 active members. From 51 to 60, 167 active. 61 to 70, 214. 71 to 80, 178. 80 to 90, 70. 91 to 118. So I think it shows that the life of the church is very much on the youthful side. When sometimes people see the attendance at church, they think it's on the older side. But let's put it this way, a lot of our elders are a little more faithful week after week. But that doesn't mean that their enthusiasm and their support isn't there, but the younger ones. But many times they are in activities a lot with their families too in a very busy day and age. But at least we feel like the church is broadly represented and the age groups are very good. And I was pleased to see such high in the 20 to 50 bracket as being a very, very high participation in the life of the church. So as we look at the future, we are doing long-range planning today, and we still hope to be serving in Collinsville. Many of our families have been active, as I said, in the life of the church, and the life of the community, rather, and we hope that in some way our church has permeated the community with values that have been given to us through our Christian faith, for our ultimate goal is still to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ and to live life in His Spirit and with His kind of enthusiasm for life. We have also geared up and had a new person added to our staff this month, and that is a director of volunteer, or coordinator of volunteer ministries. This is a new program in the life of our church to coordinate the talents of people with the needs of people in the community and to bring those together in programs that will be effective in the life of the church. And this is a lay person. It's Don Schaffner. He recently retired at the age of 54 from being the head of the vocational program in the Granite City High School. And he brought that in 1973 into not just conception but into reality. And so we feel we have somebody on our staff who is really going to be helpful in bringing this ministry to the people of Collinsville as well as to our church. One more story that I'd like to share with you, and that some years, months after I came here, one lady had only seen me in my Sunday morning robes. She had never seen me, I guess, outside of my robes, because she sat in the back of the church. I knew exactly where she sat. And she sat there in the back of the church, and she'd come through line, and she always saw me in the robe. And this is one of my favorite stories that happened to me here in Collinsville. And I was one day down at Piggly Wiggly. I was off. I had blue jeans on and a sweatshirt, and I was going down the aisle looking for my stuff, and I happened to see her kind of bending over looking at something on the shelf, and I said, "Well, hello there, Mrs. So-and-so," and she looked up at me. She said, "Oh, well, it's you, Reverend Sabbert. I didn't recognize you with your clothes on." Boy, did I look around to see who heard that. She's still around town, too. Now, if you all have any questions that you would like to ask, I can't say that I can always give the answers, but if you'd like to maybe share some things too, it's a little hard always getting into all the different people, but if you had something you'd like to ask or you'd like to share, or if you'd like to correct, because I always stand to be corrected. I was a history major, and I realized if you read this book, it's one way. If you read that book, it's another way. If you read this book, it's still another way. So I realized that history is never in concrete. That's why we have 4 Gospels. Floyd.
Show the offering basket.
Oh, yeah, I didn't talk about that. Yes, the artifacts. I thought you ought to have a few artifacts here. Dear Klingon Boyle? Boyle. Okay, get that U and E right. Okay, this is from the early church, and that's how they took up the offering. The little bell was also, as I understand it, was used to keep people awake. Now you can't, it's hard for us to imagine that sermons, and I'm not saying that St. John did at that time, but years ago sermons went 2 hours. They were masterpieces. I mean, I have a library of sermons that goes back over the years, and my gosh, I don't know how people ever sat through those things. I read them, and they just don't inspire me one iota. But thank heavens it did in that day and age. But anyhow, this was to wake them up and then to take up the offering. The usher. Now, those of you at St. Peter and Paul still have a wire basket, right, on the end? Yeah. Well, you don't sleep at your church. You don't need a bell. But anyhow, the word der Klingen Vital means a bell on a sack. Okay, vital is sack, klingel is bell. Okay, and so they would use this to take up the offering. Oh, you want to give? Very good. Let's see what he put in there. I'll give you $1,000 later. Is that? No, actually, this is item number 5021A. Our committee has done such a fine job that every article has a number in its catalog. So that's what that is. But thank you for the donation. Some of them had rabbit's feet on or foot on the end of the stick, and then they would tickle people under the nose when they went to sleep. Now, it's hard to imagine that life would be that way, but literally it was. People were made to keep awake that way. That's what the job was, or the elders, whoever it was. Yeah. Good.
Does this new staff member realize